And okay, thank you. And we have some minutes, as always. And if anybody's has any questions or all good?
I read them, they look fine to me.
Good.
Look good. Okay, motion to approve. Yeah, and all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you very much for the minutes, Jess. Okay, so Greg, why don't you start us off with
Water level, the numbers that we have are from April's reading. So whatever may have transpired because of May is a bunch. But almost certainly, all, if not all, if not nearly all of the wells are going to be above the 90th percentile. We're basically at
we're heading to
historic
over 100%.
It's an unusual, not a normal amount of water in the aquifer, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I mean, like we're at, if it's 95% for the big four and who knows, we got a lot of fresh water down there. And it'd be interesting to know, but we can't know. What does that do to the layering of the water in the aquifer?
Well, let's not assume what we can't know. Let's ask the question and say, boy, it would be interesting to kind of investigate, right? Because look, I mean, from my point of view, well, let Ken take it to the. I mean, what's happened in between this report and
okay, yeah,
and
we've had an incredible month so far. As of 5/18, when I did the last report, which I sent to you all. Basically, one day, I guess it was back around the 16th or so, we had over 4 inches of rain in one day, which is one of the highest numbers I've ever recorded while I was doing this job. But anyhow, we're currently at month to date at 5.12 inches of rain and a year to date at that number of 27.91 inches, which is higher than anything we've had in the last 5 years. So that explains the peak of the curve in essence. So we're starting out our season of withdrawal in a very, very strong position, which is great because from here on in, with the trees, transpiration, evaporation, and all the other kind of things that occur, including people coming back on the island, we're going to be drawing it down. So this is
right. We needed the water.
We have a good reservoir.
But when you say this is the highest we've had in 5 years, Greg, you were looking at the trend over like the last 3 years or four years. Because we were coming from a period that was lower than usual.
Yes.
For the first time in 20 years, we had right a decline.
Yes, right.
Yes. Well, it's just
in the larger, what do they call it in the stock market, secular trend of constant rise over decades. We were in a
slump.
Yeah, in a bit of a slump.
Yeah.
So it's really good to see it coming back. But I said to you, the two of you 2 months ago, we could easily, you started taking a look at, the year we were flooding and how it compares to the year we were flooding. We have it. I guess my perspective, and I've said this before, is that climate change and the change toward increased rainfall on the East Coast and decreased in the West Coast climate change is our biggest threat. It's certainly of concern to people who are worrying about saltwater intrusion. And it's also possibly our biggest opportunity because this is, what you were saying is what's the impact of that and flushing out the aquifer. And so, we need the water for tidal flushing. There's all sorts of ways in which this represents a threat and an opportunity. So anyway. Just perspective.
Good. So we're in good shape.
Yeah. Okay, so if we don't need to talk more about the rain dance, we should turn to what we were working on last month, which is Suffolk County Health Department. But they're reporting to us, which I found really interesting. I don't know if we want to process that some more. But more importantly, the idea that we would be now developing a study of the nearshore area and perhaps of the homes that tested over 5 milligrams of nitrogen in the center as well, based on Suffolk County Health Department's panel of tests that they have available to us for $100 a pop. Joe, have you had further conversation with Jason Heim?
Yeah, so Jason reiterated their support on a county level to partner with the town. And it seems like it's a bit of an iterative process between both parties. We have to understand who and how many folks we might include in this next round of testing, understand our funding sources and amounts, and then on their end, how many resources to allocate, generally figuring out the schedule and what the back end results and analytics would look like for us. So generally speaking, their support is ongoing, they're engaged, and we need to work together to iron out the details. So perhaps that's a role for this committee to help identify our priorities, our targets for this round, be it the areas, the timing, and then perhaps we can make a request to the town board to more formally support this effort, because I think we'll need ultimately some sort of a resolution to engage with the county and vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that does behoove us to work on exactly how this would work, but to work on it now. I mean, I'd like this meeting to be, I don't want to let grass grow under our
I think we
feet.
have to recognize, from my opinion here, that since we've had so much rain
Right.
and aquifers are so full, right now is
Does
the time,
make
and
us-
basically, that things are very healthy. It should be with regards to saltwater intrusion trying to come back on us, because basically we have a lot of push going up right now. So I don't know if it's a better thing to kind of like wait until we have a downside. Which
Well, I
is-
just add that I think that depending on how many people participate.
Yeah.
which, you know, if we just look at the near shore zone, you know, we could be looking at least on the scale with which we did for the center test, but I would suspect a multiple of that based on the size, you know, that we're looking at. And that's going to take, we're not going to be able to capture those tests within even a season because of the
Right, it'll
scale.
be multiple.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that in our discussion with Jason, we were targeting the fall. I mean, also even from their point of view, that would be
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
They would have the personnel to do this work in the fall
yeah.
going
There's
forward. And
260
that dovetails with what you were saying about that we have a period
Well,
of
it depends on
drawdown.
the summer, right? There are 265 residents in Silver Beach area, approximately. And I would imagine a third of those are in the waterfront.
Yeah, so I think for a sense of scale, you know, we did just under 200 tests for the center. Looking at the broader territory, I think we would probably be in the range of, you know, maybe 300 to 600 people who participate if we just look at nearshore. And that's not going to allow us to do a snapshot style test of,
Good point.
you know, so we have, I think, if we're considering those numbers and offering it to that part of the community, you know, the periphery of the island, we can't pursue really a single, you know, an August snapshot. It's going to be a multi-seasonal collection effort. I don't think that is a detriment to the test at all, though, because the spectrum of components that we're looking for will give us a much better insight.
It's going to be the county test, right?
Yes,
So we're going to see a lot more than just salt, basically.
exactly, yeah.
Right, it's a
So in a way,
panel
we'll
of
be able-
200 different,
Which is going to be
Right.
also good for the bays. I mean, that's the other side of the coin. When we have a lot of water on a runoff, we get a lot of runoff into the bay, okay?
Right.
So
right.
that's another thing that.
Yeah,
It's the downside also of flushing out our system, our aquifer, is that they were flushing it into the bay.
Right.
But I think what Ken means is that what's coming back in is diluted from all the rain that we've had. Am I right?
Right, testing now
Yeah.
would give us a poor picture of saltwater
Volumes,
intrusion.
Yeah.
Because I guess, isn't there the readings at the South Ferry? I don't know if they have seen a reduction in their salt levels.
I can't answer that.
I don't know who has that information, it's USGS, I guess.
Yeah,
Everything,
but we have a contact there that we can follow up on that and what their data is showing. And I think we have real-time access to it.
We have to also find somebody to take the test, right? Because Mermaid perhaps is interested.
Yeah, the county's
County's
gonna, yeah, at least at this stage of the partnership, they would perform the whole service as if an individual had signed up for the test. In this case, we're just doing that at scale, and effectively the town would pay the whole fee.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's the other thing that we'd have to tangle with is, 500 people participate. That's a $50,000 effort. It's a great value for what you're getting, but it's not it's not a money.
Well, it's 50,000 over how many,
Working with us.
how many years, though? Are we thinking this is a 5-year expense?
No, I think this is a 6-month expense. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said that you couldn't do all of it.
Well, not all in one season.
I don't think we could do it in the month and a half that we did the center test. We wouldn't be able to take all 500 tests in August or even August and September. We would want to probably start at the end of the summer, but that may linger into the winter and possibly even the spring.
Okay, I misunderstood.
Yeah.
So we're looking at total nearshore area.
Well, that's,
Or are we gonna identify
This is what we
what
have,
we're
this is
doing?
what this discussion is about.
yeah, and it's a bit iterative, perhaps if the town board members or the QI committee said, your budget is this, then we perhaps would work backwards to say, all right, well, we can only really accommodate 300 tests. Are there certain neighborhoods that we want to target? There's things like that.
Well, obviously the ones that desire it and have been most outspoken about having testing.
I mean, I think there's a bunch of ways in which to prioritize, and I think together we need to look at that. But one of our commitments is to address nearshore concerns, and that's why the saltwater intrusion
Well, there's a lot of
component is
variables
so
in this
important.
thing. The number of people in the island and the draw. I know my wells, which is about 25 feet deep, basically my salt varies depending upon the amount of rain we've had and the drought or when it's low. I would imagine other people's wells, if they have the family over and they're drawing a lot of water, if they're near shore, they may have a higher salt content during the periods of high withdrawal,
Right.
depending on coning and some other kind of things. So there's, at least on the salt side, there's a lot of variation. Maybe on the other,
And it also, that speaks
100,
also to when you would want to test those folks during a lot of draw when they're, but I want to get Andrew in here because he's raised his hand a couple of times and hasn't had it.
So maybe this is just a statement of the obvious, but when we did the center triangle testing,
Uh-huh.
we had a fairly narrow set of questions
Right.
and we had a narrow panel as a result. And we were testing a hypothesis, and the hypothesis was, we got a nitrate issue in the center, and the question is,
Widespread.
do we? Right? And how big is it? Where is it? So forth. To sponsor a test with, what is it, 100 or 200?
200 different
100
compounds. It's the full spectrum Suffolk County Health Department test.
We
that you have to get when you first get a C of O.
Right, okay. I just feel that we need a really specific set of questions that we're trying to answer.
Mhm.
Now, if the set of questions is all around salt and saltwater intrusion,
Mhm.
then the design of the test, when it's done, so forth, needs to be tailored to answer those questions. If the test is, no, we're really looking at septic tank infiltration,
Mhm.
then it seems to me it's a different protocol around when the testing is done, how the testing is done, and so forth. So I think it's incumbent on us to be quite clear
Mhm.
about what we're trying to do.
Mhm.
And I'm not clear at this point.
Well, so again, this started from, we've tested the center and we want to balance what we're doing, and so we want to test near shore. But I said from like last month and even before Jason presented to us, the folks who got tests above 5 milligrams of nitrogen in the center, I think we owe it to them to answer the question or to offer answers to the question, and what else is in their water, since they know they have septic contamination.
Okay, so that's a different set of
Different set of
questions.
questions for those folks.
And that's going to drive the testing protocol to a different design.
Well, let
I
me,
would think. I need to,
let me add to your
Yeah.
line of question, because I think this is very relevant. When we did the center, we picked a testing panel that aligned with the hypothesis.
correct.
In this case, we're doing the process a little different because the test is presented to us. So we're not picking a panel, rather the full spectrum potability test is what's offered. And so that, I think, is the exercise here. We're really quantifying and measuring potability. And the participant now has no blind spots like they did with the center. We ran into trouble, I think, when we were talking about the results and what are the impacts, because we only looked at, nitrates, associated components. But this test will have things like pesticide, herbicides, PFAS, nitrates.
Is that panel of 200
For dial.
lined up with the MCLs that the EPA
Exactly.
puts out on the Safe Drinking
It's
Water Act?
designed for that. It's
Okay.
designed to say whether you have to treat before you get your C of O.
Yeah, so I
We
think
do
this.
have a couple of years to abide by the federal.
For
The
the
new
more
federal,
strict PFAS,
PFAS levels,
PFOA,
yes.
right.
Yeah,
A few years.
so this, I think, gives us the opportunity to have a more comprehensive discussion about what are the water quality issues, how many folks are dealing with potability issues? We would be able to say 10%, 5%, 50% of the participants have non-potable water, and it could be for 50 different reasons. Some people have iron problems, manganese, but we would be able to see everything that currently contributes to potability.
And they would too. So presumably the design of this will be similar to the design of what we did in the center, where they get their test and we're doing some form of aggregated community. Here's what's going on in this community. Here's what's going on in
So we're
that
going to do
community.
it by watershed, and then we're going to do zones, the way we did it before?
I think that's a great way to start. And that goes back to being the iterative, comment I made earlier. There may be some neighborhoods where that doesn't perhaps make sense, or we don't have high participation, But I think the added value in this approach is that, unlike the center test, now a participant will have all of the information to make a decision whether they need to install treatment, or they have, they want to talk with their neighborhood group and say, hey, this is an issue maybe we're dealing with in our locale. But whereas in the center, they said, either you had the nitrogen problem or you didn't, but it really didn't tell you if you didn't have any other problem, or, maybe you didn't, maybe you did. And so it didn't close the loop, so to speak, with people who are worried about water quality. Now we have the opportunity to do that. You'll get the full spectrum test. If you have an iron problem, you can pursue an iron system. If you have a salt problem, you can address that accordingly. If we have widespread problems that are similar, we can help develop more informed policy. So this is really, I think, a better version of what we did the first time. And it, I think, can really help.
Be more complete.
Yeah, this eliminates blind spots, and also will bring a much higher level of education to those who are participating, because they will see all of the issues that they might have, or find out that there are no issues.
Yeah, I made another point too. Most of these wells are shallow wells. 20 feet, something, 20, less than
near
30,
shore.
more than likely.
Mhm.
You could divide this up by a zone like FEMA. There are certain areas that are very low,
Mhm.
and that could be a special area that you would you could block out, for instance. And then there's a little bit less than, a little bit higher than FEMA. So those are some areas that that would be interesting, that'd be easy to map.
It would, and that's also something that we can analyze
Right.
later, perhaps, where, you may be in your sub-watershed, but then we could ask the county to say, hey, how many of these are in elevation.
And actually, we have an interactive USGS map
Yeah.
system that shows us what the elevation is at
Yeah.
Just click
for
on
each
it.
per home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to, this is raw water test or is this in-house testing?
This would be
Raw water.
raw water.
Okay.
Certainly at a minimum, raw water. Now, the county may have a policy where they do, they do both. Because, you want to see if your treatment's working. I don't know that that's something we were
Well,
pursuing.
that was something that I was going to just follow up on is it would be interesting to see, and I think for homeowner and us to see the efficacy of in-house systems, like if we took it from the faucet, for example, because that's where most people would have their RO systems placed. It would be nice to see that information.
Yeah.
So that's a question to
how
go
is
back
that-
to Jason,
I
right?
can answer
That's-
that question. They do it for for everything you have installed. With my case, there are 3 tests. There's one that's tested outside, raw water. There's one that's tested inside with a faucet, which does not have all the treatment that I have. And then there's a special water RO system that I have, and they test that too. So I
Okay.
get 3 results,
And it's still the $100.
same price.
Okay,
Well, that's
well,
good to know.
that's really good to know.
Oh, it's great.
That
They
would
bring
be
3
really
bottles.
interesting
You
data.
get- You get 3 bottles,
Yeah.
They come.
Yeah, well, we should definitely ask that because the scale of this, we want to make sure that that is something they want to do and that they have the resources to do,
Mhm.
before we triple the.
Yeah, it's a lot
Really
of
help
work.
us though to know, to see
To help you.
the
us being
efficiency of a
WC.
RO system in the same household, if the homeowner's willing to
It's
share that
fantastic.
information.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah, definitely.
It's true. I mean, I've always been concerned. I mean, one of my concerns about filtration is, are you filtering everything you need to be filtering? Is something getting through? Are you getting the nitrogen but not the PFAS? Are you getting the,
Yes,
So-
that some systems are very efficient and the more expensive ones are, and the less expensive ones just aren't.
Well,
as
efficiency, I'm not
efficient.
sure what you mean by water usage possibly.
Well, I
One of
mean,
the issues you
efficiency-
have with RO is water usage.
Water waste is what I'm talking about with
Well,
efficiency and detection.
That would be the what? The 5 to 1, 2 to, what,
Exactly.
what's the ratio of water that goes
what are
out?
you
Yeah.
getting?
And basically, it's about, 5 gallons to get 3.
Yeah, and Greg has been telling us that it's getting better, that their efficiency of these systems are getting better.
What would do it, I mean, higher volumes, if you had a whole house system, that's kind of frightening to me, because if your neighbor has that system and your well is right next to his,
It's a lot of draw.
he is going to be sucking a lot of water out of the ground, basically, compared to you.
Mhm.
If you got a bunch of people lined up with these high volume systems, you got a problem for a bigger area. So it's not all good news with RO.
No, I think that it bears consideration, it also bears education, homeowner education, about how it's
Yeah,
affecting
yeah.
our wells and their own usage.
I also would just like to make the comment that, so I recently got a test from somebody, it was sent to me, one of these extensive panel
Water
tests
places, yeah.
from Hay Beach, where the concern was that they were over the limit, potability limit for nitrogen. But I take a look at the test and they're also showing concerns about 1,4-dioxane, which I wasn't even I thinking PFAS and PFOS, but that's another one of those things that is indicative of, it's in all these products, it's in the detergents and in shampoos. And so they're clearly receiving. So they're clearly receiving something more than just fertilizer runoff. I think that it's important for us to be communicating to the whole community that what's happening in the center is not staying in the center. It's moving toward the near shore. It's heading their way. Whatever problems we've been picking up in the center are going to head to the near shore. And that's why I'm most interested, actually, one of the high priorities for me would be, it's self-serving because I live in this area, but the overlap between near shore and center, the areas that are both, that are close to the center, but also close to the saltwater intrusion. Those folks are in between this rock and hard place. And people don't quite have their heads wrapped around, the aquifer is getting thinner and thinner as you go in that direction. So you're getting, not only are you getting everything coming from the center, but it's going to concentrate into a smaller and smaller layer. So
But there's some
potentially,
filtration
near shore
happening.
has much worse
There
along,
is
but not a lot.
filtration
Once you get
happening
down below the root systems, the water's just moving.
The do we want to consider an island-wide, effort? I mean, is it a blank check type situation where we?
I don't know about blank check, because I think that there is going to be, at some point, you have to be realistic about money. I think that there's a lot of support for testing, but I think that at some point, we may be seeing more people requesting tests than we're willing to provide free tests to just everybody. And at a certain point, people will get the idea they should, look, I was appalled at Jason Himes' data about how much testing they'd done over the last decade, because it basically showed that people are not testing, despite the fact that we say you should test your water, you should test your water. People just don't do it. So, I mean, some people are alert and do it, but typically you'll go a long time without that. So, normalizing the process of testing is good, but at the same time, if we did the nitrogen testing in the center and you showed that you had only 2 milligrams of nitrogen in your house, to me, you're low priority.
Mhm.
If you showed that you have 8 or 9 milligrams of nitrogen, that shows me I want to see the rest of what's going on with your water. So there are a number of criteria, being both in the near shore and the center, having had a high nitrogen test, or just being near shore and having a concern about saltwater intrusion, and the knowledge that not necessarily in the peninsular areas, but in many of the near shore areas, the center is heading your way.
So, Peter, your position would be to maintain the nearshore effort.
I think it should be a near shore effort with certain other categories that are prioritized. People who've had bad tests and people who are both near shore and center should be prioritized. Again, at some point I recused myself because that's me.
Right.
So what you're saying that to follow up on those whose nitrates, which is indicative of septic waste, follow up and give them a larger panel of testing at the same time as we test for the most vulnerable nearshore areas. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm saying that we should be at this stage look, we have a couple of things. There's the mechanics of how it's going to be done. So are we going to place a link on the town website that says, click here if you want to have a test? Rather, snail mail is tending to be an old way to do things.
I recommend we would, because the mailing has become an additional cost as well,
There's no reason for that, and we have such good web people now.
Yeah.
so.
And I think a reason we're doing this is that we want the data. I mean, but that's another part of it. I mean.
And that's part of the structuring
That
of
should be
the
part of,
study.
otherwise, why?
Why do it if
We want the data. So I don't know if you want to do it by street, that's a whole other strategy as to how, or by FEMA area or whatever, in order to try and understand an area.
My only concern going into this is that we can get the data. And that and the issues of anonymity, if they really are issues, I've had, Mark Ween made the comment that, everybody's got to have a review before they sell their house. They're going to have to do a test. And so it's going to be revealed. So if you're concerned about your value of your home, it's really a false concern. It's not really that you get to keep this information private anyway. On the other hand, we don't want to trigger people's, concerns about whatever. And so anonymity is fine by me, but I just want to make sure that Suffolk County Health Department, as
There's
Gold
another layer of this now that.
is willing to do this with us.
So they, go ahead.
I'm sorry, before we lose this thread. That brings up another issue, which I had spoken about a couple years ago, and that is realtors have this information about water testing, because they have to, every time there's a transaction, they have to test the water. I believe it's the seller. So that information is out there, and it's a source that we could gather from, if people are willing to share the results of their testing. That could be part of our panel of investigation, if you will. Because I know that one of the realtors said to me, "Why aren't you using this?" I said, "I don't know." So
It's a great
that's,
point.
I think, and it's a pretty easy thing to do, to go to the different realtors and just say, can you find out if homeowners are willing to share this information? If not personally, like as we did in the center, perhaps by zone or some type of identifying segment. But I think we should follow up.
So the mechanics of this are something happening on our website, inviting people to participate, offering tests, asking them if they would be willing to share the test that was done when their home was purchased or sold.
Mhm.
You know, so we're really talking about designing something into the website, allowing us to both kick off this study and also do things like, that's a great idea, that's a tremendous idea.
Well, I mean, the realtor
Take-
just said, I don't know why you're not
Picking
using this
individuals, I
information.
think, and not the real estate.
I'm sorry?
I
It's
think
not
the
the
owner
realtors who would share
and the
it.
seller, get together, and the guy's buying the place says, I want a water test.
But the
And that-
realtor knows
And that data
who,
goes to him,
right, they know who.
not to the realtor.
This is, what Lisa's proposing, going to realtors is, that's a separate program to what we started talking about.
Right, it's separate to do additional tests.
It would be really valuable, I think, but,
Right, so, okay, so.
we just have to put it in the right bucket, because if we let that cross hatch,
You're absolutely right.
You know what the
Trying to
hell's
keep
going
the
on.
conversation clear. So let's focus on the study idea for now, but let's not lose what this is bringing up here.
your program B, what do you think?
And we did that for the center, and we added relevant tests that were done for the town buildings at the same time for the sake of, adding to the data. So I think that's a great concept, that we ask if you want to share your test, you send it in. I'm a little concerned about the who's going to manage that data, but I think that would be great if we could add.
All right, so step it into, taking it one foot in front of another. Meg,
I was gonna say, I've heard four, I think, four
Right.
really great, very distinct
Right,
concepts
right.
going on here. So one of them is creating a database where people could voluntarily share their water quality information, so they can share their water testing. That's a very separate entity than anything else. It's something that I think the town board wanted to look into anyway, is setting up some kind of way for people to voluntarily share their water testing information. So that's one. The second one was, Peter, you mentioned revisiting the center testing for people who are over in nitrates. I would also add that there are people who didn't get in on the first round who were interested, so maybe consider opening it back up to people.
if you didn't get tested or if you had a high test.
So that's the second concept. The third one was testing the nearshore overlay for saltwater intrusion, that kind of being the main focus with saltwater intrusion. But the benefit of working with the county is you get everything. That is a huge area. That's like a third of the island, maybe more. So I would break that down into sections. So I would say there's two places that have reached out to us specifically asking for this, Montclair and Silver Beach. I would start there. It's a big undertaking, so maybe do a smaller area for the first round with the county to see how it all coordinates. So we don't bite off more than we or the county can chew. So I don't know which,
Good suggestion.
and then the other one.
Although I just, about Montclair and Silver Beach, I'll let you go to number 4 because you're developing something here. But Montclair and Silver Beach are both peninsular areas. So they're both going to be specific to the characters of peninsular areas. I would like to see some nearshore area that is essentially what I was describing before, in harm's way for the spread from the center. Because there is that point where you have a mix
That's a good
between
point.
threats.
And then there are the islands. so to
And
speak.
it's different. Those guys are protected from the center.
I think that the area that would probably be the most influenced by the center would be Palms Harbor side. Would be
Yeah.
Cartwright, that area, if you wanted that kind of near shore.
Right, so then we might have 3 areas that we make as high priority
For
for
near shore. and-
qualification for getting these free tests.
And then the other part of all of this is making sure that you have really clearly defined goals and objectives with what information you need in order to make what kind of decisions. So what kind of conclusions or what kind of responses are you prepared to look at because of these water tests? And also sorting out exactly how to make the financial request to WQI, who funded the last round. So having some concept of will it be phased over time? I know the goal is to aim for August, September, October, because that's when you're gonna get, your worst case scenario, water quality testing. It's after the high season, it's after the drought season. It's when you're gonna get like a real sample. So.
Could I ask you
everything
to,
that-
so that fourth component, if you could simplify what that is?
It's kind of the umbrella for everything.
Right.
It's determining all of your qualifying factors for each one of those things, those three.
Each of those, yeah.
So defining your parameters for the saltwater intrusion testing, the whys, the what fors, the, solutions, should X, Y, and Z happen, maybe. Revisiting the center testing, defining those parameters, making sure that your goals and objectives are clear. And then same thing if you do set up like an island-wide place for people to voluntarily share information, what are the reasons for that, collecting that information, how would it be used? So, it's a lot of really big things that you're talking about, but I think they're all great.
Can I just state, to follow up on that, I think that the people in the vulnerable near shore areas, they're looking at saltwater and
Yes.
chlorides. Okay, they know that, they
Primarily, yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
What they don't always understand, and I think that this is incumbent on us to educate and to say that you need to test for 1,4-dioxane, PFAS, PFOAS, PCPs. These, and I don't think people know that they need to test for that.
Yeah,
So that's part of,
I agree. I think a lot of them know, oh, I gotta look at manganese, I need to look at iron, because those are the things that physically show up in your water. They're the ones that turn your sink orange or blue or green, so those are the things people know to look for, but it's the silent things that people don't necessarily know to look for that they'll automatically be testing for under this process, because the county will automatically test for everything, which is great. You get the whole kitchen sink. And so then you may find things that you weren't anticipating, which is kind of cool.
And so one of the things that you introduced in that fourth point was preparing this for presentation to the WQI. And I think that that's a really important thing, and I think that we do have to keep in mind it's money. So, and there may be limits as a result of it being money.
I want to add also that the county has expressed some hesitation and reservation about being able to achieve this in a timely way for us if the numbers
Too big.
Get too big.
too big. So to Meg's point about perhaps phasing the peninsular areas might make, and perhaps phasing the budget request might make this more effective, that we could perhaps execute a smaller phase 2, which would be these most vulnerable areas, which we know we want to target end of summer, fall. And then we revisit in a subsequent phase, those center residents, those other nearshore areas. Because it sounded like, and these are loose, but it sounded like, 200 tests is a much different outcome with the county than 500 tests. 200 seemed like something they could reasonably do with their resources now in a reasonable time frame for us. 500 tests plus seemed to be the kind of thing that would take many seasons of collecting, longer lead times for data to return.
And also the difference between those two is it's an ask of 20K versus 50K of WQI budget, so
At once.
at one time.
That kind of got me thinking as you were talking about targeting. If we target a small enough area, we would then know and operate only those people in that targeted area. When the data came back, we know where we were from the
Like a
standpoint
peninsular area.
of the data. In other words,
Yeah.
wherever. I mean, Cartwright, or if you go to a spot and just target an area, a subset of where we think the best place is, we don't care necessarily what the street address is because we know that area. And therefore we get that data and they're protected. There's no sharing of that kind of street information or individual information.
So we have a concentrated.
And for us,
set of
right,
results.
it would reduce the number, help us maybe do a better job targeting, because these are areas of concern instead of like a shotgun approach where you do a big area, then try to subdivide it somehow and analyze the data. I don't know. What do
It'd
you-
also be a faster turnaround from the county if you did it in smaller batches, but well organized. they'd be able to go in, like, let's just take Montclair, for example, because it's small, isolated.
Yes, and
If
they
take
collect
point
the
in
data
Montclair,
better. Yeah.
They can go in one day, take all the tests.
Yeah.
It'll be a faster turnaround than if they're doing Montclair, they're going out to Silver Beach, they're going over to,
Yes.
you know, it.
Like Montclair
So if we
once.
keep it
Silver Beach.
organized and do it in sections, you can even do Silver Beach all around the perimeter in sections.
Mm.
And if you give them 10 at a time, 20 at a time, it's well organized, you might get a faster turnaround.
I think Montclair is a great place to start because of the limitations, you know, the geographical limitations.
Yeah.
And also, something else that Medica had mentioned, and it's very important, and I think it's something we really have to think long and hard about, because I don't know that we really did think long and hard about it with the center testing, is once the information is out there, what do you give people who really want to do something about it? What kind of information do we then give them that is reliable, that doesn't contribute to the problem? You know, like we were talking about RO systems. And I think that's a very large component in this is, okay, how are we going to advise people to mitigate?
Mhm.
That is conscionable,
We're
that
not-
we are comfortable with.
It's a tricky area because we're
Is
not.
that number 5?
Yes. Well, no, mitigation is separate.
Well, but it's an outcome.
It's B on the outline.
And also in our agenda, the intent, one of the things that, I mean, I think part of where this is coming from, you weren't at the library
I was
meeting.
not at-
However, one of the things that came back to me was people are looking for solutions orientation. And Andrew was bringing this up at our last meeting, was,
Yeah.
okay, we need to make that pivot from, it's not that we're no longer asking the question, do we have a problem? Certainly in the center, we know we have a problem. Certainly people in the near shore know that they have concerns about saltwater intrusion. But so, again, I mean, there was one other agenda item that we put, well, actually two that we put in between this conversation. But you're now beginning to, you know, touch upon that, you know, that we do need to focus on a solutions orientation. Andrew.
So we need to, I think, define what the role of the town is.
Mhm.
Is the role of the town to provide, the role of the town could be, well, owner, it's your problem. It's not ours. The role of the town could be, we are a repository of water quality information. It's up to you to analyze it.
Right.
And figure out what you want to do with it.
All right, I'm
role-
officially combining items
Wait.
4 and 7 of our agenda. We're talking now about both this testing program and solutions orientation.
Okay, but I just, all right.
So,
The next point on that continuum could be, here's the water quality data.
mhm.
Here's a bunch of private purveyors who can help you analyze it. The next point on that continuum could be, here's the water quality data, and here's a range of solutions that you could consider, and here are the parameters, cost, environmental issues, and so forth associated with those solutions. The next point on that continuum could be, we're going to solve this problem for you.
Provide some sort of a solution.
I don't know where we are on that continuum, but in this conversation,
Mhm.
we're kind of going back and forth.
Which
And-
is not terrible when you're in brainstorming mode.
No, I agree.
Right. So we should,
But how do people feel about that?
Well, the results,
One of us has a different.
1 second, Lisa, the results will come with a written summary as any test result would from the county's laboratory. So it will spell out for them, so they'll get the test results, looks, you know, it'd be a chart, probably not very user-friendly, but it will have all of the data. But then they'll get a written letter that will be customized to their results. It will say what was over the limit, what is out of range, and it will be comprehensive. It will talk about things like, you know, if your pH is too low, or things that aren't even necessarily on an MCL, but they'll get a written summary of their test results. So that's where it will be handed off.
Okay.
When you're talking about on the spectrum. So our role will be after that. You know, so in terms of breaking down what their issues are, the participant already has that. when they get their test.
It's a very good
results
analysis.
from the county.
They give you.
I've never seen,
And they will make recommendations for adjustments, like for instance, if your pH is low, it will say something like, your pH is recommended as 7, and low pH leaves you vulnerable to pipe corrosion and potential, addition of contaminants because of the pH. So they will have additional context.
However, a homeowner receiving that information is being basically told, it's your responsibility.
Yes.
So
And
it's
it
the
is, though.
individual, and it is their
It
responsibility.
is, and it is the private wells, and
Absolutely.
that is the arrangement, that it's their system, they paid to install it, they maintain it. So, on some level, that is our relationship. We as a township don't have.
Yes, but Montclair, we're talking about Montclair Colony, and in Montclair Colony, we gave 4 homeowners permission to put in what was just under the line of a public water system for themselves. It's possible. Now, there are situations where there's something in between the individual homeowner and the role of the town. There are places where the community has a role to provide for itself, or potentially could have a role to provide for itself. At Fresh Pond, we've really emphasized, we're all together, we're like working on this one problem, and we've helped the town, we've partnered with the town, but to support a project that's for the whole problem, not for just each individual homeowner. There are communities here that could do things. Greg Nissan has made the suggestion to some of our communities that, maybe we need an island-wide district, but small water districts are also a possibility and could be managed. And West Neck was a beautiful example of, until recently, for decades, the community got together, created a solution. So there's another level where we are talking to communities about, can you create a solution?
Deering Harbor.
Can we partner with Deering Harbor has, its own little township that we.
Yeah, I don't see it so definitive, Andrew. I don't see it on your continuum of such a definitive role. I think that the role fluctuates. I think the town's role in saying we will solve your problem for you, but essentially that is what we do. It's what we're even doing here, is helping to solve some of the problems, because that's our purview. That's the town's purview. We have the agencies available to us to do that. So I think that we're working in tandem with homeowners.
I would emphasize that, this partnership idea. It's kind of like God. It's like the town helps communities that help themselves. That's what my experience of it has been. When we started to do stuff, then the town was there. But if we hadn't done anything, the town really couldn't step in and take, it doesn't have the resources to solve the problem for each community. But when the town sees a community begin to create a solution, eventually the town comes in and maybe, you don't want them in there. But
It's not like land, okay? Land, you've got boundaries. We're talking about a resource that has no
That's
boundaries.
flowing.
So what happens in your neighbor's lot is happening to you. And we're looking at watersheds, and we're seeing how water flows to all of us, underneath all of us. So you can't be, we have to be cognizant that we're sharing in this.
And we do need to go back and forth across that range of individual to community to town.
To Bill and Andrew, I would say there's really not that many paths. It's not like an unlimited number of solutions. So I'm hopeful that one of the outcomes will be decisiveness by the specific neighborhood, what they want to do. Do they want to handle this on their own as individuals? Do they want to unite and seek a shared solution? I think we should be open to any of those things, but it should be driven by what the community wants, and the community is likely to be informed by the results as to what they.
okay, so what I'm hearing is, we sponsor these tests. The testing protocol, I'm hearing there's a strong argument for prioritizing it geographically, because that accommodates to the capacity of the Suffolk County Health Department to actually conduct the tests and get the answers back.
And our ability, yeah.
So we pay for that testing. we provide that information to the participating homeowners individually. And we provide that information to the community more generally with the results masked, as we did with the center triangle, so that the public can have a meaningful discussion about it without it really violating some individual's real or perceived sense of privacy to encourage participation. We're then kind of leaving it to the community to see what results from that. What may result from that is, hey, it's not so bad. You may have some individual fixes, and on we march. You may get, hey, collectively, we've got a significant issue in this area, and who knows what'll come out of that, but it could be as much as, hey, 40% of us want community water down here, and a reaching out through the town to the Suffolk County Water Authority. I mean, the continuum of community responses to the test results vary all over the map. It's not in our business here to predict that or to channel it. It's in our business here to create the information, to facilitate the community response and discussion.
Say it's in your court.
Yeah.
Well, to say at least they have to be.
I just want to make sure I know
It's a
where
responsibility.
we're going with it. I'll make a data point, which is when we get this information back and when we look at it by zone or whatever else, we should be mindful of setting those zone boundaries up so we get statistically meaningful results within the zones. Because if you looked at what we did in the center triangle, we had a couple of those zones with like
Very few tests.
very few tests. And then let's say we had half of them at the action level or above.
It's not
Statistically, you can't say that everybody in that zone, that those percentages apply, because you have such a
If there's
small
only 3
number.
tests and 2 of them are bad, it doesn't tell you have a
2/3
problem.
Correct.
It tells you maybe there are 2 or 3 people who are alert to they're in harm's way in some fashion.
Yeah, so I think we need a statistical review of how we break the zones up to make sure that we are going to get statistically meaningful results. That's a kind of a narrow technical point. But I think when we design the protocols, we ought to keep
Well,
it.
Again, on the theory that we actually want to move toward action and not to endless discussion, it's sounding to me like this conversation is focusing in on perhaps Montclair, perhaps Silver Beach, but phase 1 area.
Or subsets thereof.
And a request that the town through and working through the WQI, accept this request that we want to do the first 50 tests of what might be a 200 or 300 or over some years 500 test panel. Again, that's more than I think the Suffolk County said they did in the last decade. So we'd really, you're now doubling, tripling what kind of information we have. So I would like to see us move toward, actually proposing something like narrowing this in. Maybe Montclair is just the thing to do.
I like Montclair, it's small,
Mm-hmm.
it's contained.
Well, and they've a long time ago, when we went to the Suffolk County Water Authority, the example we brought them was Montclair Colony. How would you solve the problem here? And then, actually,
And
they
they seem
said
to be-
maybe Sachem's Woods or someplace along the path between West Neck and them.
They also have the orientation to want to pick up the ball and do things, as they did with the Bay.
And I think that community is also asking for some attention in this, some love and attention, and maybe willing to stand up and
It's small.
do.
What is the boundary?
towards
Meg,
this.
do you know what the literal boundary of Montclair Colony
It's
is?
bigger than
Seashore.
you think, in Montclair Peninsula.
It depends, I mean, you can break it off however you want to.
Yeah.
you know, you could either do from Simpson Road out to the water, which is really just that small
Just that
end.
area.
Or you can do like the whole Mananic Peninsula, which at that point, what, you go to Smith Street and cut it off, or, you know, you'd have to pick a point. But, you know, most of the complaints are coming from the end of the peninsula.
Right.
Um,
Making that boundary,
boatyard.
Yeah,
Mhm.
making that boundary is essential, really,
Right.
for the smallness or the largeness of it.
Now, I had put a laundry list, and it's just the things that like had been floating around in our discussions of, under the category of brainstorming solutions.
Right.
And in that list, we've actually skipped over something that's relevant, which is, and we'll come back to, which is the fertilizer discussion that Lisa's been leading. But before we go there, I had reached out to Meg and just asked, like, did we want to bring irrigation policy and cistern use into this discussion? And when you talk about an area like Montclair Colony, you're talking about an area where cisterns have been going in, where cistern use has been a factor, where draw during the summer is likely to cause saltwater intrusion. So irrigation policy is a factor here. Do you want to bring us to the, where you think the discussion about irrigation policy is with the board? I mean, it's.
well, it's kind of in a holding pattern.
Mhm.
So,
It could reveal itself.
yeah, I mean, we were kind of looking for some input from you guys, some direction,
Mhm.
if you had any strong feelings one way or the other. But, essentially, the initial thoughts were to eliminate the grandfathering of well-drawn irrigation in the near
Right.
shore overlay. So that would require cistern use if you're gonna have any form of irrigation, allow for roof capture of rain runoff
Mhm,
into your cistern,
mhm.
or runoff from other places, allow that into your cistern for usage in irrigating if you're going to. And that's sort of the big one, but we're looking for other recommendations.
Right. Well, I raised this with Joe on the phone the other day, and you raised just some concerns that the cisterns could be seen as sort of a loophole or as an area of policy concern, that people are just putting in cisterns willy-nilly because they expect, and that there maybe is not fully thought through what.
Yeah, I don't know that willy-nilly, I don't know. I think I'd categorize it more that when the cistern policy first started, that I don't think folks expected them to be so prolific. In new applications now, it's almost like a standard component to be included, and our reliance on them is also expanding. Now certain applications are using cistern based water for water on their docks or for topping off pools. So our reliance on trucked in water seems to be expanding, and the feedback that we've had from some members of the community is that that isn't necessarily good either. There's other aspects of this, the constant truck traffic, the reliance on our neighbors who are also water challenged to source water to folks who perhaps are using it in non-essential ways.
Neighbors meaning other towns.
Right. The trucked in water policy just means that it can't come from Shelter Island. So the trucking company takes it from, the north or the South Fork, and some of those communities, and particularly this last year, are implementing their own irrigation restrictions.
Right.
They
And
don't want us to be trucking their water here.
well, certainly, if you're a Cutchogue resident who can't water his lawn on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday because of water restrictions, you certainly don't want that same water system delivering water to fill people's irrigation systems on Shelter Island.
Especially if it's Tuesday and Thursday.
Especially,
water's
right.
leaving.
And so, there's some separation between the utility operator and how they are managing the water to suit their own infrastructure needs, but certainly there's a growing concern in both North Fork and South Fork communities about their own interest in supplying this water. So
And at the same time, I'm going to make a comment, then I'll hand it off to you. At the same time, we're saying we have a lot of water in the center. So and even to the point where we're looking at, are we going to hit flooding situations again, as we did a decade ago? I do think that when we're doing solutions orientation, and when trucked in water is becoming sort of, it has some negative implications to it, we're sitting on a gold mine here. A business of trucking water from right here to cisterns on Montclair Colony reduces their pressure to do pumped irrigation, puts water where water is needed to fight saltwater intrusion, and potentially is even a funding source for further work that we do, because that water has value.
It's slippery slope, I think.
But I'm willing to.
In the context of the irrigation policy, I think my suggestion would be to look at language for the cisterns as not a preference, but rather demonstrating a need for you to have one of these systems that requires trucked in water to help mitigate the proliferation of cisterns. I think an island where every other house has a cistern and is taking on 5,000 gallons of water a week is not a model that we intended to when we first made this policy.
Yeah.
Well, okay, Lisa, I said Lisa. and
I
then Mary.
believe that years ago, when there was a concern, it never got into the code about the fact that cisterns were diverting water from the aquifer. And so there was an outcry, and I thought it was legislation that there were no cisterns to be installed because of that reason. It's like a hardening of the ground.
You couldn't capture the
Water.
rainwater.
Runoff.
Yeah.
But I think that's exactly the kind of policy we would revisit. I don't think the science supports saying you can't capture rainwater to use for irrigation.
Because it is making its way into the
The
aquifer.
scale with which folks would capture water from their roof
It's very little.
is very little compared to what falls over the whole property. I don't know that I guess in an extreme situation, if somebody started storing 100,000 gallons of water on their, that might be unusual. But the cisterns that we have now are, 5 to 10,000 gallons.
And they're not for the purpose of hoarding water. They're not taking water out of the bank and keeping it out of the bank. They're for the purpose of irrigation, which is to put it back into the ground. So,
That's different,
and
yeah.
probably to apply it in more effective ways than rain, which is going to lead to.
For instance, we also know from monitoring aquifer levels that very little of the rain we get during the growing season actually percolates down to raise the aquifer level. It's very, very much diminishing returns rainfall that we get in June, July, and August.
Right.
So the idea is not to
Withdrawal
pump.
is heavy.
Right, so if you're giving somebody the ability to capture 5,000 gallons over the course of August, that's probably not 5,000 gallons that would make it.
Right.
No.
But it
during
could
the
be
winter
5,000
months.
gallons.
The winter months, different story.
Continue to capture it.
But, and the 5,000 gallons that they're using from their cistern is 5,000 gallons that remains in the aquifer that they haven't pumped up. So it does make it, that rooftop water makes it to the aquifer in a substitution fashion. It prevents pumping out from the aquifer.
It's your time shifting idea that you use at the golf course. You maybe save it in the winter and use it in the summer or something like that. But from a potability standpoint, you're really pushing the envelope. I mean, it would require quite a sophisticated system to clean the water or ultraviolet light and all the other kind of things to make it potable.
Oh, for domestic use.
Yeah.
No,
No,
potability,
it's not.
nobody's talking about
You can't do
potability
that.
of gray water.
It's
Yeah.
kind of a thing where.
It's a non-starter.
So I think there's some common sense, adjustments we can make on that.
Just a very quick interjection about, when you were talking about trucked in water. I mean, the water that comes from Romansky and all of those trucks, that's coming from municipal water.
That's right.
Not fire hydrants.
That's right.
So that really, those communities that are being concerned about, that's up to them to say to their utilities, okay, you can't draw from this community.
Yeah.
You can't use our fire
And-
hydrants.
And they are.
Concern is they will.
Yeah, and they are, for instance, I think there's two neighborhoods now that have moved to prohibit truck filling
Yeah.
from their hydrants. And I would expect that trend to continue.
And
So-
can I just follow
yeah, go
one
ahead.
quick, and
Go
then I'll
for
be
it,
done.
go for it.
And that goes back to a whole nother sort of set of variables, which is wherever they're taking the water from. If they're taking it from, say, for example, a SQUA managed district, that's being tested. But wherever the water is being drawn from and then it's coming onto the island, if it's coming from municipal water supply, that's great. But you got to make sure it is. you know?
It is, I think the requirement is for
From Hannah
both.
Bays, which may be a little bit more lax in the protocols than
Yeah.
Squaw or
But it's not being
Riverhead.
used for drinking water. It's being used
No,
for
but it's still
irrigation.
going in the ground.
Well, it's also being used for pools,
Pools.
filling up pools, topping up pools. Pools have a requirement that the water has to be potable. So, the county regulates pool water differently. So
So there is a distinction with irrigation cisterns specifically as opposed to.
yeah, there's a
filling.
distinction between, like potable cisterns and an irrigation
Irrigation
cistern.
cistern.
There's different requirements for where you fill up, like how you fill the cistern, how it,
Okay,
How it's
so
trucked
but
and
given that, what is, Lisa, what is your concern if you were just to focus on irrigation cisterns? What would be your concern or slippery slope in taking water just from the center and bringing it to an irrigation
I
system?
think the slippery slope was your comment about we're sitting on a gold mine.
Ah.
This year, we are sitting on a gold mine.
Oh, next year
In
it might
2
not.
years, we
Yeah,
could
it
be
may
sitting
not.
on a
The
pot of
cost would be
sand.
very high for any water taking from here.
So, I mean,
Right.
I think that, and once you start giving that message and start allowing water to go out,
All right, well, I
Then you-
apologize then, the way I expressed myself is wrong. But it nevertheless seems to me like a whole bunch of advantages to displacing trucked-in water, irrigation cisterns with plentiful water that we have in the center that may be a little high nitrogen, but hey, that's perfect for
Irrigation.
irrigation purposes.
We got a lot of
So,
that.
so the folks
I'm
that
not-
might have, that would fear that drawing water out from under their feet.
It's gonna cause
the people
saltwater
there,
intrusion.
Is going to, so that he can have a nice green lawn, which.
or wash his boat.
Yeah, or, well, washing a
Well, so-
boat, that's different.
Irrigation cisterns. Let's focus on irrigation cisterns for a moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that, in taking water from the center and saying, I'm gonna help Menantics have green lawns.
Without
That's the case.
fertilizing.
Well, again, it's like, oh, you want a nice green lawn. I'm an old time Shelter Islander
Mhm.
in terms that brown is what you should have in July. And so
But-
that
but
a
hard-
lot of
at the
people
same
in
time-
that center triangle are gonna say, hey, wait a minute.
But wait a second, it's not just a green lawn, we don't want hardening, we don't want erosion. We want to keep the ground soft in those nearshore areas. We don't want damaging.
I don't know.
I'm afraid I haven't bought into that yet.
Yeah, really.
I do believe that what we're looking
Living on a
at,
slope, and it's very much more important to your world.
well,
Yeah.
it's neither of these, I'm not on Montclair Colony, and I'm not like directly in the center either. So just looking at the two sets of problems, it strikes me that Montclair Colony needs to fight saltwater intrusion and needs to fight erosion. And needs the water to get into the ground, and if it happens to be that it displaces fertilizer treatments, that would be great. And if it also displaces trucks coming across the ferry, that would be great.
that also comes with a push for native plantings that can withstand the droughts and.
Absolutely.
Sure, I think there are multiple angles at green solutions, absolutely.
If you go back to individual communities managing their own issues,
Mhm.
you're gonna have people saying, you can't use my water for that, I'm sorry. Because we're in good shape here, right?
In the center.
And let us do our own thing, wherever it may be, The center is a big.
But we are
the
talking
upper-
about eliminating the grandfathered irrigation systems in areas
There
like
shouldn't be
Montclair, right?
irrigation systems on the island, thank you very much. So,
Well,
Right,
yeah,
and
and
we're
that- and that's,
talking about-
but that's such an enforcement issue, okay? I mean, I posed this to Joe Pokorny. Because in West Neck Water District, our rules and regulations, it says no irrigation except for handheld watering. Now, there are some who have voiced their opinion that's not even an efficient watering system. And I granted it isn't. There are some drip irrigations that are much more efficient than handheld water. However, in looking in my community, I have seen somebody who has just recently put in a new irrigation system for new planting. So the contention is, okay, if we allow irrigation for new plantings for the first year, okay, I'm a gardener, I get it. Who's gonna go in the second year and cut that irrigation and say, okay, you can't use it anymore? It's not reasonable to assume that people are then thereby never going to use that in year 2, 3, or 4. So I think that that's a very difficult
It is.
enforcement.
That's it.
And I think there might be better ways, I don't know what they are, of allowing people to irrigate first-year plantings or new lawns for, until it comes up, without allowing systems that never are removed. You know, they
Right.
go in and they
You look
never.
at the bottom of every privet hedge, which we have, you'll find a brown tubing that circles around all that stuff. Many times it's just, they just cut it, leave it in the ground, they just cut the tubing someplace, hopefully that turns off the water supply anyhow.
All right, Meg wanted to get a word in.
To say part of the compliance goes into the revision for the irrigation code. So
Right.
when I was speaking with Mary Ellen about how the building department is handling it and how they're trying to make it work, you know, they were talking about having a short-term permit for new plantings and having it flagged in the system so they know to check it annually. But these are all things that we have to build into the code so that the triggers can be set up, so that there can be enforceability, so that there can be timelines that can be followed. So, you know, that's part of what we're looking to do with the new revised irrigation code, is come up with standards for certain types of things. For new trees, when you're getting them started, you know, what's the time period that you need to have some kind of drip irrigation? What's the deadline to take it out? And having it be an enforceable timeline. Making sure that people are getting
That's a lot of
permits for
work,
that,
right.
things like that. So trying to establish all that as part of the revision for the irrigation.
And smart irrigation,
Well, that is.
smart irrigation.
absolutely,
And it's a requirement.
Absolutely.
And it's now a requirement at a county level.
Right.
So, as of January 1st, 2024, the county's requiring smart irrigation. So they're requiring moisture sensors for the ground, rain sensors, timers that, well, not even timers, but just sensors that say, okay, your ground is now dry and requires water, or hey, you've had rain for the last week, you don't need irrigation for the next 5 days. You know, it's now a county requirement for new systems.
All right, so this is, you know, I brought in the irrigation subject because it is one of a whole series of approaches to solutions orientation. I'd like to see us engaging the public, because again, what we're saying is we're not going to, that sometimes the town can help you with your solution. Sometimes the individual homeowner has to do it. Sometimes your community has to do it. I would like to see us continue, and I think what came out of the library discussion is that the community would like to see us shifting to solutions orientation. And since we don't have all the solutions, it's listening to, you know, gathering solutions from the communities themselves, getting them thinking along with us, thinking through the problem. So I would like to see us setting, so there's two things I think we have on the table here. One is we want to now draw a circle around what is our initial phase 1 of a testing program with the Suffolk County Health Department, and get sort of buy-in with you guys to approach the WPI
Proposal.
for funding. So we're looking for a proposal there. And that's number 1. And number 2 is I would like to see us scheduling further library events where we engage the community on a solutions level. And, you know, many solutions on the table, you know, including, I know Al was bringing up
What
when
about-
houses are transferred, having the septic systems required. When, you know, there are all kinds of different approaches. And in each one of them, getting them right that's the devil in the details. There are ways to get it wrong and get it right.
Peter, having a professional come into the library and have a professional give a presentation on a subject.
Well,
Like
sure,
irrigation, I mean,
so let's find specific people we would like
That
to
would.
to speak.
A professional, somebody.
Well,
that-
yeah, but there's a
that-
professional in a whole bunch of things. Having Greg Nissan speak is great, but I think he's gotten a lot of, you know, attention with
I
the
know
center
that
system
people
testing.
came in to speak to us
Having
when we tried to
Jason
pass the irrigation
Klein.
law.
Uh-huh.
Way back when to stop it. And there were
Well, we had a
folks
study.
that we had come in, they gave excellent presentations about why you shouldn't have an irrigation system.
Mhm.
Didn't do any good, but I'm saying they were well done. So
Mhm.
there are levels of expertise.
And objective, not somebody who owns a
And then
company.
basically, you know, irrigation is one subject, it could be water treatment, another subject, it could
Okay, I'm
be
listing them.
a bunch of things.
We have 4 nights.
Yeah, keep,
So irrigation is 1,
Mhm. Water treatment systems,
okay?
because there are all different kinds of methodologies, or resins, or.
filtration
catalysts.
systems and
Yeah,
treatment,
they can
right.
do Neutralizing
Private
systems.
filtration systems.
Okay, we have 2 more while we're brainstorming.
Um,
What else is important?
Is there a cistern expert? I mean, about discussion system, you know.
Well, let's also spread out the discussion over more topics. So we also had, you know,
Well, it could be for drinking. I mean, it could be for a
community
lot of-
water supply. That is the discussion of, does your community want to engage in a conversation about, do we want to create some
Well,
sort
that's
of,
hitting it right at the heart and going after community, public water.
it's a public water discussion, but an open one, not like saying, you know,
That's
not
the same.
dictating anything.
Did you want to?
I was gonna
Community
say,
water
USC
supply is
Cornell has some programs or classes that they could
Is
do.
that,
I
because we
know
had
that
the
they,
non-com
they
and the
do
com.
have some
Never mind.
good speakers when it comes to like planting selections.
Pesticides,
Pesticides,
herbicides.
Ticks, there was a really great presentation done on ticks, how to avoid them or what the best time to do spraying is if you're gonna spray. They have a whole bunch of different things, but when it comes to water quality, they can do stuff on plantings that are appropriate for your environment.
Well, and certainly
Might
for
have
the
some
peninsular areas that,
irrigation Information. on
Alright, so find out what they
Yeah.
might be able to
That's
offer.
a resource I thought of that might be more neutral but informative.
The library probably has a source of
Yeah.
information on topics like this and say, hey, can you find something for us?
well, do you want to reach out?
But you
to
want to
them?
make it local, Ken. You really want to keep it,
That's what I mean,
you know,
local, our library.
And we also,
yeah.
Well, Andrew,
the attendance at those events is
vary, right, we have to focus them.
so when we have those events,
Mhm.
can we put slides and even a video overlay on the website? So that if somebody can come along afterwards and tap into it and listen to it for 20 minutes, because that somebody might not have been able to make.
Recording, making sure that we're recording these meetings and these presentations and yes, I
Well, we
think
can
that's.
only do that if we have them inside. When it's under the tent, there's not the,
Okay.
I'm looking at Jessica, because she used to do these for us.
Right,
There's not the capability of doing any kind of PowerPoint or any tech, you know, anything that requires technology. So as long as we're okay with having them inside, then
I want to just add about the testing. The legislative schedule is kind of working against us now if we want to get a even peninsular testing effort for, I would say, the fall. We have to
We gotta give them.
submit a proposal. It has to be heard at a WQI meeting. It has to go to public hearing,
Correct.
town board vote. Folks need to be notified that it's an option. They need to sign up. So
all right.
we have to be very, very quick about our next step to get this, to get.
Right, so
Good point.
can we synthesize from this discussion an initial phase one proposal?
And arguably, you know, maybe we should look towards a phase that's not time sensitive on the testing. Maybe if there is a community that is best suited for off-season, you know, that might make that might make the most sense for this next phase, because I'm just looking at the calendar. If we wait till next WAC meeting to solidify a proposal, that goes then to would it go to WQI first? Or would it-
It would have to
To go
go
to
to the
town board
board,
first?
and then the board would have to agree to present it to WQI. I mean,
So-
because it's,
Well, let's ask, does it have to be the next meeting? If we were to say the Montclair Colony, the testing program for the south end of Montclair, the south end of Monantic Peninsula, or the southern half, I mean, if we can draw that around it,
The
that's,
community there.
that community, yes. A testing program for that specific community. And, you know, I don't know how many homes we're really talking about, 40?
it depends on where you draw your boundaries.
At the most.
It does depend on where you draw your boundaries, but let's say, you know, a panel of up to 50 available free tests, or up to 40 available free tests for, just for that community as a proposal, so that's, you know, would be, you know,
I suppose we could solicit interest before the funding is formally requested to gauge.
sure, we can they have their HOA and we can reach out to them. Nita, I think she's moving.
So if we were a board of directors for a company at this point, we would give general direction to the management and delegate to the management
Right,
the details around coming up with a proposal and submitting it to the WQI. We would In other words,
So who are we
let's
to
not
delegate to now?
try and manage this by committee, because it's really slow.
Uh-huh,
We wrote a letter in February
by committee.
by committee, and it took
Took a while.
8 to 12 weeks for it to actually go out the door.
Right.
So what I'm wondering is if we can delegate to Joe,
Uh-huh. Sounds like you're beginning to form a proposal here.
well, identify a geographic zone, just lay out where we're going to do the test, how many they're going to be.
Narrow initial phase one.
For Initial phase one. Joe's looking at me with,
I think you can go to WQI and get their preliminary approval before you come to the board. So you could actually probably get both done at the same time, get WQI's approval, and then go to the board with the whole picture.
I'm more worried about connecting with the residents at this stage.
Right.
Because we're talking about a form on the website, and there's a couple of pieces here. You know, sending the mailing, like we did last time, is a process we now have established. So I can take the old letter, change the dates, you know, send it out. But
Yeah,
it feels like there's too many loose ends for us to start something new and achieve this on time for the fall. That'd be,
I mean, if you're doing just the point of Montclair, like Simpson Road and down.
Let's say.
So let's say, you know, you're going down Mananic and if you keep going straight, you go right off the town landing. If you bank a right, you stay on the road. If you just do that Simpson Road, Gibbs Road, Bay Avenue, Montclair, that's a very sensitive
So
area.
that's an area that you could ask Anita Brush to
There's
help
not
us
too
with
many houses.
outreach to those homes.
4, 5, 6, 7.
yeah, maybe the best approach
It's
is.
probably
through
25,
this.
30 houses. I mean, that might be a quick turnaround where you could get a significant
But
response.
is that valuable?
As a part of a larger, you know, that would be phase one of multiple steps, yeah.
It would probably let you know how well we can work with the county, what the county turnaround could be. You know, might be a good test subject.
So you might wind up with 10 or 15 tests, $1,000, 10,000, 10 or
And they-
15,000.
You know, they reached out to us asking for it. So you probably have a pretty good turnout of people willing to participate since they're lobbying us to do it.
Well, again, there was that great anonymity, I don't say that word very well, was so important in nitrates, so you might not get. There's an X number of people are gonna say, I don't want it, forget it.
Nevertheless, if
Don't
we
make
go
it
to those
happen.
25 homes and you get 5 or 10 people
Sure.
sign up for a free water test for the fall, let's say, then that gives us that data point. We could aggregate those 5 or 10 tests. It's not anybody's individual homes.
Well, no, we would want to have the individual homes.
We're looking at not having anonymity. or
I mean, it's-
not-
I'm thinking that we are thinking individual homes. We're gonna see that report. Suffolk County is gonna say, here, you're the homeowner,
We're doing it.
Town of Shelter Island,
Yeah, we're
here's your
doing it as
copy.
Well, and we just agree as a town not to be, you know, publishing their
I don't know
specific
legally
tests.
if Stephen Cuddy would advise that, though. I mean, I think that there is you know, there is an anonymity
I don't
factor.
know if the county will allow for that either,
Right.
Allow for what?
to give us the.
They will give it to
Well, if
them.
we're paying for it, then
Maybe
that's
they
fine.
won't do it.
Then we should say, okay, you 10 or 12 people that were willing to take $100, do it, you know, write a check for $100 and get your study done.
Well, of course, but on the other hand, if they're willing to take it for free, if the county won't give it to us, the homeowners would be, part of the deal would be they give
They
it.
could give it to us, sure.
I personally would like to make a recommendation that we broaden that. I think that's just too small of an area to go through this effort, and there's not enough data. That's just in my head, you know, it seems that it would be better, we'd be better serving the community and ourselves if we just made it a larger area, because it is a big effort to do this.
Choosing neighborhoods with an association would streamline our ability to communicate with them, because we could deal exclusively with the association. It sort of put the burden on the association to communicate, get people to sign up.
Right, that would be
Okay,
nice.
so let them
That
decide.
takes a big task off of the town with the mailings and with getting responses back. That will streamline this. And, you know, we can be a little bit less,
So are you
Living with
suggesting,
the
are you
cost.
suggesting choosing a neighborhood with an area that has a homeowners association?
neighborhoods.
Or neighborhoods?
Yeah.
So you're saying that neighborhoods that have a homeowners association should be invited to communicate with us that they would like to participate in this?
Simply for the logistics of this, if we couldn't put the burden on the association for disseminating information, getting us the responses back, that would streamline this process and be able to make it work.
Yeah, go ahead,
I
Meg.
was gonna say to that end, Montclair has a homeowners association,
Yes.
like that
And
whole.
a good one,
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
50 homes.
we could expand, yeah.
Do you have to be in those associations in both of those neighborhoods to live there?
We know.
Or is it
No,
voluntary?
it's optional.
It's optional.
I don't think you have to be a member of the association.
So I don't think it's a requirement.
No, you don't have to be a member.
Right,
Choice.
To the extent it's a Manatee Homeowners
Right.
Association.
Right.
so,
That's the
And
name
there's
of it.
only so many people that.
Right, you have to be a member of that homeowners association to be part of this
mailing
testing, not
list.
necessarily be part of Manatee Peninsula living.
It'd be motivating for them.
That's also, he provides, yes,
Okay,
it
well,
does
that
provide a
sounds like a good
service that the
idea.
homeowners association could.
Send it out to the HOAs, to the Montclair Colony HOA.
You're right, in order to do this as something we can handle as an initial proposal, which is just basically the pilot of a larger process,
You have a good leader there.
approaching the Manatee Homeowners Association, offering to members of the Manatee Homeowners Association a free water test. Montclair Homeowners
Montclair.
Association. Montclair Homeowners, it's the
Montclair
Montclair.
Colony.
Manatee.
It is Manatee
It's
Homeowners
Manatee.
Association. That, thank you, Al.
Okay.
So the Manatee Peninsula Association, we would be offering to their membership through their homeowners association, participation in a free Suffolk County Health Department water test.
And they don't have to be a homeowners association member
No.
to
They
participate.
have to go through their homeowners
They have to
association to
figure
do
that
it,
out,
though.
right.
They are
Okay,
going to
just to
manage it.
clarify, we're saying two different things. The association doesn't require, if you're living, I can live next door to somebody who's in the association, I'm still a part of that community, but I choose to be in that association or not.
Correct.
Right.
So if we send it out to the Montclair Colony or the Manatee Association, they send it to the members, but they can also disseminate that information to the larger
Anyone
body
in
of
their
people.
community.
Yeah.
Anybody.
Yeah.
And it's just that we go through them to do the administration of this.
Yes,
To get
I get
signed.
What I'm trying to envision for the process here is that we can get a proposal in front of the board and WQI quickly. But what we don't have time to do is put together a mailing, wait a week for people to get the letters, give them 6 weeks to reply, keep a spreadsheet as the letters come in, fill it out, send out a follow-up letter saying when the test is going to start. We don't have time for that in this.
But I think that homeowners association has been asking us for this. We'll
Yeah.
jump at this opportunity.
Yeah.
We'll take the ball and run with it. It's again, community, we can help those who help themselves.
We could put together a letter that they can then distribute.
Are you gonna do that?
Yeah, we can just modify the previous one. And then I think we would look to this association to send back to us everybody that's participating. And that's the
All right,
list.
so when is the next WQI meeting?
Probably the Thursday after the 1st of June.
yeah, it's, June 6th.
Okay, can we, I'd be happy to join you or whomever, but can we approach the WQI?
Yeah, the amount has to be fixed, right, for the public hearing that we request?
You could say, with a potential maximum of.
Oh, over, we
or
can
like
ask for
up
more.
to, yeah,
Not usually.
ask for, we'd like to request financials up to
Like
20 grand
20,
or whatever.
Another 50
We'll
homes
take an
about.
estimate of
Right,
how many
okay.
homes, like, we'll talk to the association, see what their,
What they think it's gonna be like,
yeah, and what their
represent.
Boundaries.
designated boundaries are.
Just can't go over.
However many people are in the boundaries, and then we'll just set that as the maximum limit, number of households within the district, so to speak. And
So
then,
is Anita Brush still the president? Do you
Yes,
know?
I think
She is
she
still
is,
the
yeah.
president. She hasn't yet retired from that position.
Um,
So I would be happy to reach out to Anita and ask her if she would
She's very good.
spearhead
by
the
way.
communication
She's
with
good
their
there.
community.
Okay, yeah, but just link me in.
No,
on that.
absolutely.
Then I'll hand the
Okay,
And then the plan would be then to propose up to X number determined by
Okay.
our conversation with Anita at the next WQI.
right, so basically what we're saying, there are probably 100 families, we'll say, within the whole organization. There are probably 50 right in the lower area where we like. This could be anywhere within that whole segment, depending on how we word the letter, okay? And the other would be the account. In other words, offering them X number. So like 50 would be a lot,
No, I don't think we were gonna,
okay, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So ask them to come up with 25, for instance.
I mean, I suspect you'll get 10 or 15
It would be a
bites.
reasonable number. And they could even choose. They say, well, some people don't need it because they already have the money to spend, but these other people don't. I don't know.
Yeah, but we're trying to collect data.
Right, but
So
so a
as much as we can
distribution
get.
that we can
Well, it's a
get.
combination of data and money, so, yeah.
Right,
No,
it's
I mean,
always-
but the ultimate goal is to collect
Well,
data.
this would be if you collect the data, you got the whole Montclair area, which is
Well,
gonna be a
it's-
little tougher.
I don't think
Sort
we're
out.
cutting off just the very tip at this point. I think if we're
No,
talking
you're
to
not.
the Menantic
So we
Peninsula
don't know, that
Association,
could be a
then,
lot. Once you get up higher in
Right.
the peninsula, it becomes very different.
right,
Yeah,
but
just
even
the-
they are going to be under some time pressure and in communication pressure,
I'm
so.
saying that your
so-
data's getting diffused in my
Right.
mind.
Right.
Because if you go up the peninsula towards the town pond up there, whatever that is,
It's gonna, you're gonna be changing the
you're
characteristics.
changing your environment, or if you go close to,
But we'll have, if
To the
according to
outline.
the procedure Greg is suggesting, we'll have, okay, here, it's literally, we can see the shading off from, maybe influenced by the center to
We could do, we could even zone it, an upper
We could
zone.
within
we
their,
could say south of Simpson.
You can create 3 or 4 different zones within that.
within that.
And probably your
peninsula.
association is gonna have a much better idea of the problem areas.
We'll reach out to.
It's to their
to
benefit,
the
so it's.
association.
Yeah.
They should
All right, but
select well.
this seems like something that, I mean, unless I'm, do we have any objection to doing this?
Like this.
So then I would just call for, I don't know if we need a motion and a vote, or do we just
Yes.
have consensus that we all agree that we should be doing, we should now go ahead and do, this is as a first phase 1 pilot of
So let's
using
summarize.
Suffolk County.
Draft, summarize.
Okay, maybe make a proposal, Andrew, make it a
I was hoping
specific
I
summary.
didn't have to do that,
But you're
this
good
is,
at that.
okay, so this is phase one. Phase one applies to the members of the Menantic Peninsula Association, okay?
Not just the members, all right, you could be not in the
People
association.
in the community covered by that association, within the boundaries of their, whatever they consider their boundaries.
Okay, within the
From
boundaries.
West Neck to Benantic to Smith Street.
Thank you. From West Neck to Menantic to Smith Street.
Okay, we're gonna work through through the association.
Right.
So the,
The town, somebody, you, we're gonna,
contact their president.
Proposal.
Which Joe will draw.
proposal. The proposal is that on a voluntary basis, homeowners will consent to, agree to, the Suffolk County Health Department conducting their broad panel potability test.
And giving it to us.
Now, are we going, okay, so this, I want to get into this. Are we actually going to ask for the individual data? Or are we going to get the data from the Suffolk County Health Department on the basis of zones, which protects the anonymity?
We don't think that we can do that. We don't think that.
I think when a letter goes out, what we'd like is a copy of the letter.
We can be anonymous, we can anonymize, but at this point, we're asking them in return for us paying for your test and arranging it and all of that, you will also give us your test.
Okay, but we can try to mask the data, but
Yes,
if
you can read
somebody
that.
FOIAs,
Yeah,
We
that's true.
can protect it,
Yeah,
correct.
okay, so the participants need to know
Mhm.
that the data,
They can take the
Potentially
public record.
is in the public
They can
record.
take
On the
the-
other hand, that data,
Hold on one
may
second.
ever.
I think that the county will deliver to us the results by a zone.
You
So
think
long
we'll
as-
do that?
Yes, because they deliver it to us now and as a zone, they just make up the zone, they remove the
Oh,
street.
yeah, but we're not paying what they do at this point. We're paying for this, and it's part of the WQI application. People sign off and say, I'll provide, if you want, I will provide you with.
In return for a grant for the
In
septic
return,
systems.
yes, that's part of the deal.
What I'm just suggesting is that they have the option to give us the test and we don't demand it from the get-go because that may depress interest in doing this and there's no
So they would
reason.
have the option to not necessarily give us.
To the chase?
Yep.
If I cared about,
Anonymity.
if I cared about keeping this information private,
Mhm.
the $100,
I wouldn't participate.
Right,
the $100 doesn't change my mind.
right.
And so my view is
Mhm.
that we should do what we can to protect that privacy, the privacy of that data, so that we get more people to participate.
Okay.
And if that means we got to pay for zonal information as opposed to paying for property-specific information, fine.
Well, you
I know-
you and Greg
I know
have opposing
Greg-
opinions.
Well, it's
That's a different view, but I'm just-
You know, make that part of your proposal that one of these things will be considered.
But why can't a homeowner check off a box? Say, I am willing
It's
to
a-
share this information with the town. I am not willing to share this.
I want this information to.
Oh,
be-
that's fine, but I want that, then we're giving the homeowner the opportunity to protect the data,
Right.
which I'm fine with that, because I don't,
But they will still have their zone.
they'll have their zone, that's fine.
If you check mark there, shit can the rest of the application because the town isn't gonna pay for it. I mean, I
that's-
don't understand. We talk about, we want data and we're worried about we're not gonna get enough data, but the data we get is, it's in a
Is
some
it too
sort of a
broad?
bucket. I mean, you know how I felt about the way the nitrate turned out. I mean, now we're gonna go back in and we're gonna say, okay, let's, with specifics of who's got what.
I'm understanding from Meg that we can actually get the zones tight enough so that we can get meaningful information for policy purposes out of the data.
Yeah, I don't know
Think we
why.
can? Because if we can, I don't care about the customer information.
We can't get the information by a smaller area.
Okay, it sounds to me like the resolution of this discussion is small zones.
Let me just pose a question to the committee though, because this seems to be an ongoing issue. Why do we care the granularity of the test location as a committee and as a town? We're still arguing about what our role is going to be in this. Why do we need to know the individuals?
Yeah, why is that
They have, high manganese and the neighbor has high iron. If it's in a zone that's a few blocks, I mean, what?
Well, again, maybe it's because of the lack of clarity in terms of what we got out of the nitrate zoning. And I signed off, I agreed with that, and looking at it now, I say, my God, now we're gonna go back and everybody that's got more than 5, we're gonna have them give us another test, get
Well, yes, we are. That's what I would like to see happen because it would give us the data we didn't get.
Let's cut that second thing off and just say, give us your information.
But what will you decipher from that, Greg? I'm not sure. You're going.
If we
you
had
as a committee are
individual,
going to
if we had the
through
individual numbers of what's going on
And say
in
what?
zone 9 and zone 8 and zone 10 and
say
zone
what?
11,
And say what,
we'd
though?
be able to say, okay, we've got a low number, high number, low number, low number, low number.
You have that.
What's
though.
going on? I don't have that,
Yeah, of course.
other than the zone, which is at the.
No, Greg, within each zone, we showed exactly how many tests there were and what the test was. I mean, you
And
looked
what
at
was
that
the pattern
tabulated
in
data.
those results? What was the pattern in the results?
Pattern
We
was.
got no pattern. other than this is
Greg, that's not an accurate characterization either. The pattern is quite clear that from the town down through zones 8, 9, 11, where the flow is heading southwards. There's one area up in the northeast section that has also got some sort of interesting thing near where the old garden center had been. But we have clarity, and it stops right at at Mananta Creek, and on the other side of Mananta Creek, it's.
Greg, and again, just humor for a second. Let's just say we picked a given zone, zone 9, and there were 15 tests. You saw all 15 test results. You just didn't know with a pin whose house it was. So you knew the range of data you could see from looking at it. You had 5 tests that were under 5, 2, 3, 7, 12, 15. We saw all of that data.
Again, I saw no pattern there other than it was zone 8.
But I'm not sure what pattern you'd see if you saw that this was 7 School Street versus 9 School Street. And we know from hearing from the community that there is opposition to sharing if the value's in the data, we got to get more.
Here's the Island Golf Course.
And doesn't, also, Greg, doesn't it
Oh,
matter
you're right.
in the amount of responses in each area? I mean, I think that, from what I'm taking from this is, you're looking at, say, zone 8, and I'm just out of the top of my head, you're only seeing X amount of responses, so you're looking at only that data, which could be skewed very, I mean, it couldn't be a poor representation if there are 100 people in there. So it depends on how many responses you have in every.
Okay, so I want to pick up on that. We're going to get the participants who are, the people who are willing to participate before we draw the zones, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that should allow us to draw the zones big enough to get statistically relevant data.
And small enough to be.
Equalize.
It's small enough to be granular and therefore informative about where the issues are. So I'm happy to leave to Joe.
Let me add one more layer of, I think, analysis on that. Why don't we ask the county to draw up useful zones? They are the experts, not only in the public health aspect
They
of
do
this,
that.
but also in the, the testing and policy of this. They will look at all of the addresses and ask them to come up with something that
They do that?
both meets their policy for sharing the information and leaves us with something helpful to.
But I want you, can you review their zone lines? Because you're sitting in these meetings and they're not.
Well, here's the problem with reviewing the zone lines, that we don't know where all of the pins are. When we did the center test, every address that came in only went to the testing company.
No, but hold on. That was my point. We're going to know who's asking for the test. Before the test is done, we're going to know who's asking for the test. Then we draw the zone lines.
Then results come back.
Then results come back and we don't
I see.
see the results.
So we would see a participant in the test.
Yes,
When the tests come back, we just know they're by their zone.
right.
Yeah.
But I'd like you, because you're sitting in these meetings, to at least look at their zone lines.
I see, yes.
So I can tell you part of that's gonna depend upon the response and how many people
we
in
have.
a certain
Yeah.
area
Right.
decide. Because that's what happened last time, is that you didn't get as much response in certain zones as you did in others. So the lines were kind of driven partially by the response rate, and some areas, rather large areas, had a low response rate.
So again, I'm,
Led to,
But that's where we are, where
exactly.
if that's
So
what, where we
were.
end up,
You know,
that's where we end up.
Exactly.
Isn't Montclair Colony a relatively small part of this Manatee Peninsula Association?
Yes. It's a very.
It goes all the way
small
up to the
It
town
goes to
pond,
Smith Street. It goes, well,
all the way up to Smith Street.
Mhm.
We're talking a chunk, I mean, I'm not interested in that much up in here, basically the whole thing is down here.
And we did some of it in this,
we did like,
one of the zones.
Yes, you did along
we
that,
did the perimeter of.
Oh, wow.
honestly, it will be important. This is one area, where, if you're going to service, I don't know that we're going to ever get to public water for Montclair Colony, but that was a consideration and something we thought through, even in the abstract, just as a, a principle of thinking through how these things will work. And that's where we came up with, you run a main down there from somewhere further up, and if 40% of the people in that community say they're going to hook up, then Suffolk County Water Authority is happy to go and service them. And
There's,
so having people get tests, somewhat up towards Smith Street and with a focus on Montclair
so we
Colony.
know where we are. I mean, we know this is clean up here already, so as we tested. Nobody, the people that tested along
Have
here.
nitrogen,
Okay, I want to go back to this privacy.
right, but they
I
may have.
want to know whether Greg's on board with this.
Right, yes, I know, that's,
Okay,
we want to get
so
chief consensus.
Here was the idea, all right? The letter's going to go out. The participants are going to come the participants are going to identify themselves and come back. We're going to take that data and go to Suffolk County. Suffolk County is going to strike the balance between zones as small as possible to be relevant, but big enough to be statistically valid. Joe is going to review those zone lines
We might adjust.
and get into a dialogue with them about, take his local knowledge and apply it to those zone lines. Then we go forward with the test. The information goes to the county, and the participants get notified. The town gets notified, okay? But as to the results, but not as to the addresses.
Well, this
So if
is,
there's a
you're protecting anonymity.
Right.
The homeowners will be invited as well if they would like to share their individual result, they can.
Okay, fine. Homeowners given the
And
option.
that way we accommodate, get as much information
It's
as
a
possible.
yes/no check in there.
Right. And then Greg, does that make you at least a little less uncomfortable with?
Well, it wouldn't be the first time that it's a 4-1 and Greg is the no on things
No, it won't be.
with the WQI, so.
Even 5
We'll
to
see
1?
how it works out. I mean,
You're not willing, you're not ready to block.
Is it your feeling that the WQI won't allow this money to go toward this?
well, that would certainly be at this point my vote, but as I say, usually I'm the one in 4-1 votes. Because there's 5 of us on
On the
that.
QI, WQI.
Yeah, WQI, yeah.
Everything else.
And your opposition is strictly because of the
Not having the address.
sharing of the address.
That's exactly right.
What's data?
That if we're trying to get data and we want to have data in some
It's so
unknown
much easier
number
to
of pockets.
analyze.
And I found personally, looking at what happened with the nitrate numbers, now I know that those zones were made much, much larger than they should have been, and I agreed when we discussed it.
But you
So,
think they should be made
blame me as
smaller.
well, I blame myself.
But the statistical validity would have been more of a trick if you made the zone smaller.
I don't know that that's true.
Okay.
But it was a first run.
Uh-huh.
It's a first run,
Yeah.
and it was vague because we just didn't know how it was going to land, and now we do. So, it's a refining process that as we go forward, it may, in 2 years, it may yield not much
Why don't we
information, but
bounce,
it might.
bounce this off of our homeowners association?
We
president,
will do that.
And that will help us a lot.
But again, in order for us to move forward, it sounds like Greg is agreeing that
Okay.
he'd like to see it be every address, but we're working as hard as we can to
Yeah.
get as many of those
We would like to have
addresses,
no
make it
checkboxes.
voluntary. And we're making some accommodation to the group sense that anonymity might produce more
If the
results.
county doesn't allow the sharing of the exact address, would this suffice? That we're saying, we can't tell you to give it to us, but if you'd like to share it, that's the best we can do.
I would much prefer it the other way.
Well, I'm creating a situation here where it's not up to us to decide, that the only way the county will.
I can't
move
decide
forward-
on that right now, so
Okay.
I can't tell you.
Okay.
Okay, all right, but it does sound like we're sort of being invited to accept Greg as, pushing us more specific data, but he says, go forward. So let's go forward.
I mean, honestly, I would love to have more specific data
I would
as
too,
well.
so I'm
But I
not,
think
his point
that
is
we
well
did,
taken.
I just don't think people are going to participate.
Right,
No,
your
that's the way
point is
we're-
also well taken.
We're
So
trying to find a balance
Right.
here
Right.
between
So,
getting as much participation
Right.
and protecting anonymity, which I think that our Stephen Kaya would agree with, and getting as much information as we can. So we got it.
Right. All right, so now, and we are also trying to reach an end and say, let's vote and do it. So is there more to the proposal?
No, I don't think so.
I think it's a
Okay.
great idea.
So I
Have
think
a
we got
motion?
Proposal, I think that is the motion.
That's
I'm
the
not sure-
motion.
I'm not sure how well Jessica has that down.
I'm making the motion,
Work on it, you're making a
I'll
motion.
second the
looking for a
motion.
second.
I will second.
All in
the motion.
favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? One
Okay.
opposed.
And one not here.
And one not present. Doug is not present. I suspect Doug would have been in favor of
You
this.
remember?
And perhaps in the meantime, if Joe could contact Suffolk County and find out whether or not they would be willing to say, we understand that there's an eagerness that the town wants the specifics.
Sure.
Would they provide that?
What is the?
If
Well,
if we make that.
And the fact is, we need this dry run to flush out exactly these questions.
And maybe they've never been asked before.
Right.
Okay, it wouldn't be my first time that
I'm
I
sorry.
asked something
Their
that,
policy.
Yeah. And I'm sure they're conservative.
All right, so it's 10 to 4. everybody, had 20 minutes into overtime. I wanted to, Lisa, did you want to
Okay,
defer
well,
or mention the?
Right now, the fertilizer
brochure?
legislation is, it's still open for public comment until May 25th. Then it's going to go before the town board for, I guess, a resolution on June 6th. So that's where we are with that. As soon as it goes for adoption, then we are ready to disseminate the brochure. And Tim Patel has looked for pricing. I think that he said 2,500 copies would cost X amount of money. And the funding is, I'm not sure if he was saying it's WQI funding or if there's a separate source of funding that he mentioned that might be channeled through the Green Committee, but the funding is there for it. I'm sorry, I can't remember where it is. So that's where we are with the fertilizer.
Okay.
And somebody said something at the meeting about it's mostly landscape. We know most of the landscapers, but I have looked and seen many already, 2 trucks. There's no licensure, there's no insurance on the truck. There's nothing public to the landscapers who are doing the work. So the next thing I think I would like to suggest, and not now, obviously it's too late, but I'd like to suggest to this committee, I don't have the bandwidth for it, just getting little cards and sticking them in the windshields of landscapers, all of them, so that they know that it's now codified. They know what, we remind them of the Suffolk County timeframe. We remind them of the state runoff law, just something to
And
say,
a
we are
card that they
watching you.
display, a card, wait,
Like just a little card, you know?
that
Like,
gets given to the.
put in the windshield.
Oh, put in their windshields when you see.
Something little, just saying, now, you have to be, if you are a contractor, you have to go
Certified.
to the Shelter Island Building Department and get registered.
So you'd like to see us in our next meeting discuss actually.
Well, I'd actually
creating-
like to do it. I'd like to, I wish I had time to do it, but I'm looking
Maybe-
for somebody to draw some kind of draft, just
Uh-huh.
of that language.
I wonder if you could reach out to Tim Patel
Yeah, he's also
to there.
here. So we'll work on it. That's the next step.
Okay.
Okay.
There were just a couple of items of new business just to mention, yeah, go ahead.
Before we go to new business, I'd like the minutes to reflect with regard to item number 6,
Mhm.
Center Triangle, the library event.
Mhm.
I thought that was really well done. I thought the slides were great. I thought the presentations were great. And I thought the discussion was great. And I'll just repeat, it would be nice to be able to have a video of that for people to go onto the website and just click on it and listen to it, all or part of it.
Right.
But I really thought it was well done. So,
And we should be, I'm,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure, do we have posted the presentation?
Yes,
So the presentation is posted, so
I saw it.
the slideshow is,
You'd have to hire somebody to
It's
do
the
the video.
verbiage.
It's not like here.
and we
where
may
it's
want to think about
recorded. It's not
accomplishing
Zoomed.
that, yeah.
If we want to do that, I think we should probably, though, restrict questions till after the presentation.
I agree.
Yeah.
Because
I agree.
You know,
We needed
the
to.
conversation went on in the middle of his presentation. It was amazing that he managed to.
it was very well, it was very well done. It
Yes,
was very well done.
thank you, Andrew, that's, yeah, I too thought. it
Well,
was-
everybody put in.
Everybody
you
put
know.
in, the
Well, yes.
process was
Just a
good in creating the
process. I was sorry I
slideshows.
couldn't be there, but everybody put in.
Although you had a good event.
Well, actually, I was going to tell Joe, I'll edit his next correspondence.
All right, I'm glad Joe is back. Again, I just very, very quickly, we're going to see Kate Russi Snook here and Alice Dupre from the Monantic Creek Conservancy. The Back to the Bays program has come up with funding for a reseeding project in Monantic Creek. Kate wants to work directly with the Monantic Conservancy folks that we and the WQI have encouraged to do their own citizen science program. They have low dissolved oxygen readings throughout the year and from last summer, and they're going to be continuing onward. So the data and the actual solutions orientation are kind of now working hand in hand in Menantic Creek to try to create a successful program. So they'll be here to talk to us about that at our next meeting.
Could I very quickly try to really push this forward, bouncing on what Andrew said? June, July, August, September, 4 meetings at the library. Irrigation being the first one, the second one, water treatment, and then we can decide on the other 2. But I would like to get to the library as soon as possible so that we can find a date and then get that out to the public. So is Thursday night at 5:00 good for
Let's be very
everybody?
clear. Yeah,
Because it was a 5:00, 5:30, never
confusion,
got.
right.
Okay, so I will shoot for Thursday, the 20th or the 27th of June. Is that a good date for everybody? To your
Good
knowledge.
for me. For a discussion of solutions orientation with irrigation, with respect to irrigation.
June 27th is a WQI meeting at 6.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want those folks to be able to come to your meeting.
The 20th, we'll shoot for the 20th.
We moved it up, is that,
Because July 4th is the next, would have been your WQI meeting.
okay.
Okay, so a June 20th irrigation discussion now, we don't have, the question is now, we don't have a presentation put together, we need a process. Meg, would you be willing to be part of the leadership of that discussion? I mean, it's WIC posted thing.
Yeah, I mean, what's the goal? Is the goal to get input for drafting legislation? Public input on
Public input.
irrigation?
Public input into the irrigation and both fertile,
And maybe
both
finding
landscaping
somebody
irrigation.
who could talk comprehensively about different types of irrigation and the benefits, pros and cons. Maybe that's something that we could look to find.
We can see what we can find about that.
Okay.
If you want to communicate
Yeah.
with me and Lisa on that,
No.
that would probably be the best approach to
Okay,
try
I'll
to
secure
figure
the
out to
date.
somebody.
Okay,
And then the
I'm
next
happy to do
meeting.
outreach as needed.
all right.
The other thing I
I'm gonna
just,
push you one more.
yeah, go ahead. do one
July
more.
19th. Does that
Yes.
work for everybody for the next meeting? And that's as far as I'll go.
July 19th is a Friday.
It's a Thursday, or is that, yeah, the 18th.
18th is Thursday.
It's a,
And do you have a?
I'm not
topic?
available.
Okay.
Water treatment, that was thrown out there. I don't know if that's something you want to discuss or not.
So that would be a discussion of
Again, an open discussion.
open, but it needs to be structured. It would be, these are the different kinds of technologies that are available to address these different kinds of contaminants in your water. If you want to do it on a private basis, and these are the ins and outs of these things. And then it would go all the way through to public water or not. That strikes me as a very, very big.
No, it's too much.
Yeah,
Public water.
That's a lot. I feel like what we've been doing is saying, talk to a professional, because we're not professionals and we can't really give you
Right.
recommendations on how to treat your water. So I think it's gonna be difficult to do a presentation on water treatment
Systems.
Point of view
systems when we're not.
Systems, kind of like what you would find online.
Water treatment solutions,
Well,
or is that too broad?
see, I'm
Water treatment.
concerned about that because the problem is so variable from,
From home
well to well,
Yeah,
and therefore the solution is really bespoke.
yeah.
Well, I mean, it could be a broad,
They're very
topic.
broad categories,
Yeah,
basically.
I don't know if we
Iron,
need to be specific.
manganese, sodium, various kinds of things, pH. I mean, each of them is a separate tank in many cases. The catalyst could be certain, a different kind of catalytic material.
Do you want to just keep it to what? RO systems? Because we did find out when we we're talking to Jason Heim that the other end of the RO system is problematic, which is disposing of the filtration itself. So, that's a problem.
And it may
I'm
be,
not saying this isn't needed. I'm just struggling with how to organize it and deliver it.
What if instead of doing treatment systems, you do like the basics of water testing 101 and why everybody should try it? And just like the different options of where you can get, like who you contact to get your water tested, what the results look like when you get them, how to read the chart, maybe something like that, a more
it fails the test of orienting to solutions. This is more about knowing you have a problem.
Right.
I would like, I wouldn't mind, so Lisa asked the question, do we want to limit this only to RO systems? Knowing that
It's
there are
more-
many technologies.
More than complicated, because it's a combination of things
Yeah.
that you have to put into a system in order to make it work. It goes all the way from a mechanical filter.
Mhm,
I mean, you have a lot of iron in the sediment.
mhm.
And then you might need a pH front end on this whole thing because of the catalytic material.
But I think there are a lot of people who are, they hear the term RO systems and they're wondering what that is and
This
is
is
this
not our
appropriate for
we have
me
this
and
separate
is it?
issue.
So,
Well, you
and I
know,
think
why
that
don't we
we
just-
could get a recommendation of someone who would present, who is not Greg
Well,
and is therefore not specifically as a business interested in it, who could discuss, who could be, well, I bet
At a
that
high level, you could probably.
Greg or others might be able to point us to somebody who could be a guest at in a discussion like that and an expert in RO systems.
So we want a layperson's discussion.
A layperson's discussion with an expert there.
Yeah, a layperson's discussion of water, contamination, MCLs, what test results kind of
No,
mean.
No, 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 no,
You're
no,
going to
just
know.
RO systems, what are they? What are the drawbacks? What are the, what possible, what kinds
Isn't
of
that too
problems do
narrow?
they serve? Well, I'm trying to narrow in to a very specific, one particular solution that's on the table. Get your head around why we as a community might want them, might not want them, whether you individually might be served by one or not served by one.
How
It
about,
seems to me something that you would draw people
How about-
with interest.
okay, how about more broader than that? Point of use treatment systems, what the options are and what they do.
Point of use treatment systems, how does that sound to people?
And so you're gonna have 10 slides, maybe 15, and one of those slides, or maybe two, is gonna be on an RO system. This is kind of what they are,
Okay,
and this is the problem that they solve.
the problem they solve, and these are the limitations of using
Yeah,
point of use as our solutions.
Okay.
They solve the ones that they
They
make.
create.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Going to your praise for the last library event, what sticks out to you as being the main reason that it was so well done?
The technical information was presented in a way that a reasonably well-educated lay person who isn't a scientist could understand.
Or on this committee?
Yeah.
So it's
I mean,
the
I'm not a
Right,
scientist.
no, actually, I
It's
had
the
people in my
exporting of
neighborhood say
information.
exactly that, who came.
exporting of information in a
Yes.
clear way that speaks to your
Right.
average.
So if I'm a reasonably intelligent homeowner, all right? I want to know, and I might have a water quality issue. I would want to know, what's the world of point of use systems out there? And what do each of them do? And what problem does each one of them solve? That's what I'd want.
Okay.
Now, I don't know, but I don't know who would give this presentation.
But I think that while Greg is not the person to do the presentation because of his vested interest,
Commercial interest.
he at the same time is the person to ask, who are the experts to ask.
You know, you really do have, there's a New York State Rural Water Works. I can't remember the name of the organization.
Rural Water
It's a-
Association.
Huh?
It's the Rural Water Association.
They may have a representative that knows enough about this. I don't know. That's just one agency that comes to mind that is sort of agnostic about material and they're not going to make any money off of it.
Well, and
Yeah, it's kind of like tanks and material. I
And
mean,
Ken,
basically.
you also have a fair amount of knowledge about these, having one in
Here, it's not,
installed
here again,
yourself.
certainly not professional.
You're not a
I mean, that's
professional,
very
but you've worked with professionals
Practical,
on it.
say that, I put them in myself.
So maybe the two of you and me, we could,
Would
work
you,
on outreach looking for expertise.
I'd rather
For
have
that
an
meeting?
individual that really, you could say,
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying we are the presenters. I'm saying we are the team looking for who the
yeah,
presenter
but you
is.
get down to a simple, a couple of tanks is what you need in the basement. In essence, is what you gotta have.
Again,
Well,
Greg
it's-
has the
Depending on what your
information.
problem is, you put stuff into them. And then depending on what you put into them, you get certain stuff out of it. And certain stuff out of it shouldn't be put in your septic. I mean, that's another way.
Okay, see, I'm already learning from you just on that.
But
I
that's,
have no experience with these things.
So you'd be available on July
I'm
20th to
available.
go to the meeting and to join the
let me check
conversation,
my
to be a
calendar on
fairly
the 20th.
expert
Okay.
amateur. And, but the three of us should be in communication between meetings now,
Well, I think-
looking for a presenter.
Meg said before, Cornell is a very good resource. If they don't have anything that addresses it directly, they can probably put you in the direction of someone who can. And they're not.
So I'm nominating, I just want to buy in, I'm nominating the three of us as a subcommittee, just looking for a presenter for that meeting. An expert presenter to invite
Sure.
to join us.
And don't forget, try
And
Cornell.
and Cornell, with
Yeah.
Cornell as a suggestion.
Okay,
and-
that's.
So is the
that's
topic,
fine.
just so that we're all lined up, is it point of use water treatment systems? What are they and what problems do they solve?
Mhm.
that would be a good.
That's the topic.
Okay, what are they?
Okay.
I mean, that's fairly long, but,
Residential.
Yeah.
I like residential better.
Rather than point of use,
Residential.
residential
well,
water treatment
Residential.
system.
Use rather than whole house. Yes?
Residential point of use, then it's,
I mean,
people are thinking commercial
that's
or
one of the
large
things that you
scale.
want people to, that see this program, to
Mhm.
say there's a thing called a point of use and
Yeah.
there's a thing called whole house.
Yes, I agree.
Because this
Yeah.
creates all sorts of problems. Point of use,
Is
yeah,
the
maybe a
impact
little.
smaller?
Yeah.
That's a
So,
good
so,
point.
so,
Yeah, is a
so
good point.
therefore, do we want to cover both because we're trying to
Yeah.
show the
Yeah,
contrast?
well, you can show that's relatively straightforward.
Yeah.
So residential treatment systems, what are the options?
residential water treatment systems.
You really want
Right.
to, yeah.
Point of use is really very
Technical,
specific.
right, and but point of use.
But you'll bring it up.
It will become a key
Absolutely.
point, yeah.
I mean, it's the most reasonable expense-wise, but it doesn't, not everybody will go for that. Some
All right.
people want their shower to be.
All right.
Okay, so let's redo this again. So it's
718.
whole house water treatment systems.
Sorry.
And-
I think it's just residential.
Residential
Just put-
treatment.
It's not whole house.
It's
not
residential.
Residential,
I'm hearing two different things here.
It's residential.
Not whole house.
not whole house,
Wait a minute.
one thing.
Residential could be whole house, could be point of use.
Either way.
Right.
Okay,
Residential water treatment systems.
okay.
Could be
And
homeowner
what
water
are
treatment
they
systems.
and what was the other,
And what problems do they solve?
and what problems do they solve?
And then on the dark side, what problems do they create?
Yeah, no,
that's-
we'll get into pros and
That is,
cons. and-
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We'll have to come up with a common slide format. Okay, so, okay, this is what this does, okay?
It's almost like a pros and
This
cons.
is what this does.
Well, it could be residential water treatment systems, pros and cons.
That's succinct.
Fine.
Let's do that.
Right.
This is a 20th, 720?
That's 720, yes.
7:18.
Oh, Thursday is a 7:18?
Yeah, the other one was 620.
Yes.
Irrigation was June
6:20 and
20.
7:18.
Oh, wait,
No?
irrigation is
June
June
20.
20th.
Water treatment,
Water
sorry,
treatment,
residential water
July
treatment
18th.
system is July 18th.
July 18th is the
Okay.
water treatment, but the irrigation is June 20th.
That's a
Right.
Tuesday.
Right. And
Thursday.
It's a Thursday.
in both cases, we're talking about Thursday at 5 PM. Thursday at 5 PM.
Have I lost my mind? Isn't that a Thursday? Is
You're
that-
correct, they're both
They're
Thursdays.
both Thursday.
Right.
So just write the dates down.
20th is a Thursday, June, and July 8th.
I got you.
And it's 5 o'clock? Please put down 5 o'clock, not
5
5:30.
PM. And we'll need a little bit of behind the scenes. Meg, you're going to engage with me on behind the scenes around that presentation for
And then
6:20.
June, we can decide what we want to do for August and December, maybe after the irrigation. It would be good to, if the public is, if we're polling them and you get enough of a turnout, people can say, all right, this is what we'd like to talk about.
Mhm. Yes, in fact, in each of these meetings, I think we should probably leave 5 minutes to say, what other solutions orientations would you like? What other problem-solving approaches would you like to discuss?
Yep.
It's on the agenda. Let's get the agenda really quickly taken care of. But I shouldn't say it. I'm going to throw it to Joe. Fresh Pond has a little progress going on, so.
Yes, we received the permit for the vegetation removal. And their contract was in place to do that work from last year. So sometime around the 4th of July, once the vegetation blooms, we are all lined up to do our first phase of fresh pond remediation, and that's the removal of the vegetation,
And this will be paid for by the Neighbors
paid
Association.
for by the Neighbors Association. Yep.
Boy, the duckweed is tough this year. I
Sorry?
found the duckweed has really gone crazy for some reason. I don't know why. The
Where?
pond behind me, Hell's Pond,
Right, conditions,
it disappears the moment it rains. Hard rain takes it down for some reason. Oh, man, the moment it gets warm.
well, we're, you know, Fresh Pond is a big, large scale case of, you know,
Same
get
thing.
blooms with the hot weather. And
Yeah.
Do you want to ask if anybody has a question?
Yeah, anybody on Zoom have
Somebody
a
did have a question.
comment or question?
Half an hour.
Half an hour ago. I apologize if I missed somebody online.
Yes,
Go
guys, hi, Elise Horning. I'm actually on Simpson Road. So, and I don't want to open up a can of worms again. I know you had a long discussion about it, but I did want to make a suggestion. I've been going back and forth with Anita on
Uh-huh.
email. And I was just wondering if it was a possibility of going to Anita now. I'm poised to make my own schedule for a water test for my home. And I know other people have as well. I'm wondering if there's information out there already that you guys could grab.
Well, we have the information as to where you would go if you're ready to ask for a $100 test from Suffolk
Yeah,
County Health Department.
I have
You
that,
have
yeah,
that
I have
website,
that.
I think she wants to share that information.
Yeah, yeah,
with us right now.
I have no problem sharing. I know there's another person or two that would share the information. But Anita would maybe be able to send out an email really quickly to people.
I will communicate with Anita
Okay.
this evening.
Okay, great.
And Elise, if you would give me your email address, if you don't mind, I would CC you on that.
It's elisehorning@gmail.com.
Say Elise Horning at Gmail, Elise Horning, just like it says on the screen.
That's
Okay,
right.
great, great.
Because I
Okay.
know that we're all concerned and everybody
Mhm.
else, everybody has been trying to,
I'm glad that you spoke up because no, as we were saying, your community has been standing up for itself and been, you know, asking for
well,
us to go in this direction.
we're trying now. I feel like I'm on a safer part of the peninsula,
Peninsula? Mhm.
but I know the water trucks go past my house like twice a week. So,
Right. Right, so we know there's a solution, there's a problem crying out for a solution, so.
yeah, but we appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Okay. All right, everybody, I think I get to ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved. Okay, I can all assume we voted for that one. Thank you, everybody.